Greetings everyone, it's One Punch Dad, aka the Chief of TikTok. I've had a lot of people ask me questions like, Chief, how long have you been a warrant officer? How long did you wait in your career until you became a warrant officer? What MOS were you when you became a warrant officer? Stuff like that. So I figured I'd take today and answer a few of those questions in more of a long format, if that makes sense. So let's start with my MOS. I came in the Army as a 14 Juliet way back in 2008. Now 14 Juliet was a command and control communications and computers early warning system operator. Long title, easy to forget. You can see why they might have changed it. Anyway, a few years into my career, they split 14 Juliet. So you had 14 Golf and 14 Hotel. Now 14 Golf did data links and all of the C2 system stuff for SHORAD, which is short range air defense. So Avenger, CRAM, Sentinel, Atom Cell, all that stuff. And on the other side, you had 14 Hotel, which did all of those same things, but for Patriot. And that's where I was. I was in a Patriot battalion when they split the MOS. You sit where you split, they used to say, so I became a 14 Hotel. Around the same time I became a 14 Hotel, I became an NCO. And I was in a domain which I knew very little about, because up until that point, I had been doing the 14 Golf stuff. So I was now a leader in a domain where I was very much out of my element, and I was expected to train and lead soldiers. Now, when I came in the Army, I was actually kind of a turd. I was very lazy. I did what I was told, but to like the bare minimum. And yeah, it took some time to kind of come around. As an NCO, it wasn't actually that bad. I was in shape, I could lead, I could counsel, I could do all those things, but my job knowledge was extremely lacking. I had no technical and tactical proficiency, which was a problem. So fast forward, I get stationed in Korea. At this point, I've been in for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years maybe. And Korea is actually a pretty good place to really dive into your job and develop that technical and tactical proficiency, because they have a persistent mission, especially if you're air defense. The threat never stops over there. So we were constantly having to make sure maintenance was squared away. We were constantly having to certify on our systems and verify that we had the proficiency to do what we might have to do if a war kicked off. That was where I really started to understand the inner workings of my job and understand tactical data links, which is essentially what I'm in the Army to do and to understand. Those things came to life to me. Luckily, I got to work very closely with our warrant officers at the time, because I was at battalion, and that's where the 140 Alpha, which is what I am now, that's where he works. So I got to spend a lot of good time following those individuals around, because I was there for about 3 years altogether, and just asking them questions and watching them work. And so I really got to experience what it was like to be them by kind of being in their hip pocket and following them around. And that's why I always recommend to people what's a good way to get prepared to become a warrant officer is to find the warrant officer that you want to be and shadow them and see what their life is like. I never have it. Someone wants to spend a day walking around doing what I do and going to the meetings I go to and all that stuff. I would never say no to that. That's great experience for you, because I think a lot of people have this illusion that warrant officers just kick back and, don't really do much at all, and we just hide, and we don't go to meetings, and we don't go to PT, and we don't have to be present for a lot of things, a lot of painful things sometimes. That's not true. So I think if you are thinking about becoming a warrant officer, you need to find the warrant officer that you're trying to become, and you need to shadow them, and you need to see if that is really appetizing to you, and that's what you want to do. For me, it was. So I spent some years following around a couple of 140 Alphas. Around 2014, Sergeant Major of the Army Chandler put out guidance that he was going to make it so that if you had tattoos below the elbow, that you would not be allowed to request a commission to become an officer. And wouldn't you know it, that meant me. So my warrant officer at the time, who was a warrant officer 1, said, listen, Green, I know you're thinking about it. I know you've talked about becoming a warrant officer someday. I know you want to wait and all that stuff, but if you don't put your packet in soon, you might miss your chance, because once this goes into effect, it's really not likely that they're gonna take it away. And so kind of as an afterthought, but also a little bit out of fear for never being able to do it ever again after that, I put my packet together. I had to interview for my letter of recommendation from a CW3 because, as I said, my warrant officer at the time was a Warrant Officer 1, and your letter of recommendation writer has to be a CW3 in the MOS that you're trying to assess into. Luckily, CW3 that I interviewed with liked me. He saw the potential, and I think just in our conversations, he could see that maybe not all the warrant officer expertise was there right in that moment, but I was teachable and I liked to learn. And thankfully, he saw that and he wrote me a letter. And to this day, I really appreciate that. That's another misconception that people have, is that you need to be as smart as a warrant officer and understand your job to that level before you actually put the packet in. All your letter writer really wants to see is that you're teachable and that you can learn the things that you will need to know when you become a warrant officer. It's not realistic to expect every NCO who wants to be a warrant officer to already be as smart as one. Some are, and that's easy for them, but I think the reality is you just need to be teachable. If you're not teachable, if you're not willing to do some research and execute a little critical thinking, you're probably gonna have a tough time as a warrant officer. And so anyway, yeah, I was about 6 years in when I put my packet in. That was in 2014. I submitted my packet in the spring of 2014, and I was a qualified non-select on my first board. And I kind of thought, well, that's it. I guess that's a wrap. So I ended up continuing to be an NCO. I went to ALC, Advanced Leaders Course, got Commandant's List there, and I was thinking, hey, maybe I'll just stay an NCO. This ain't half bad. But I didn't really know what the trajectory of my career was going to be. At the time, really the only broadening assignment that I could do as a 14 hotel was to go teach at the schoolhouse. And then after that, it was, I don't really know. I don't really know what I was thinking about doing after that. Around the time I was waiting for the E6 points to come out, the warrant officer selection list dropped, and my name was on it. And then about 3 days later, the E6 points came out, and I got picked up for that as well. So my entire time being a staff sergeant, I was pretty much just waiting to go be a warrant officer. But I didn't get picked up on the warrant officer selection board until November of 2014. So that was about a 6-month wait to finally get selected. And then I didn't actually leave Korea to go to warrant officer candidate school until the following April of 2015. WOCS is about 36 days, about 5 weeks. And then I went from there to WOBC, which is Warrant Officer Basic Course. And that's where I learned my job as a 140 Alpha. That was 5 months long. And finally, in December of 2015, I was a fully branch qualified 140 Alpha. So from spring of 2014 all the way to winter of the following year is how long it took from packet submission to graduating basic course. Now, obviously, for different MOSs, that's going to be different. Flight school, if you want to be a flight warrant, that's much longer. HR techs, the 420 Alphas, their schooling is actually quite a bit shorter, so your pipeline might be a little shorter on that one. But yeah, that's pretty much how my road went. And then, yeah, your experience may vary. I know people who've put packets in at 10, 12 years in their career after having been a master sergeant. We had a master sergeant in my WOCS class, actually. There have been sergeant majors who've gone through WOCS to become warrant officers. And I've known people who've been in the Army maybe 3 or 4 years. Maybe they're a junior sergeant and the need for the MOS that they want to assess into is great enough that they actually get to come be warrant officers that early in their career. It's not unheard of. I hope that helps. Please continue to send me those questions. I'd love to answer them in this more long form format. I hate to ask because it's a very YouTube thing to do, but if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. I hope to do more of this and teach you guys a little bit about what it's like to be a warrant officer and what you can do to go warrant. Ta-ta.